Yeah. No, it's good. It's good when people participate. But it's actually today we're starting the third chelik of Derech Hashem. So there's four chalakim in Derech Hashem, and we did the first two, and now we're on the third chelik, which is all about nevuah. It's about prophecy. So that's very exciting. So whoever is just listening now for the first time, it's a perfect time to start listening. Okay, so before we talk about prophecy, the Ramchal is going to talk a little bit about what a human being is composed of. And I entitled this year, I'm a soul man, because he's going to talk about the neshama. The neshama, the nefesh, the different parts of the neshama, and the different, the different jobs, I guess you could say, that the neshama has in a human being, and how we differ from animals, and how our soul differs from the soul of animals. And after he gives that introduction, then he's going to talk about how our soul can perceive certain things which are, let's call, supernatural and prophetic and things like that. But he's going to give this, call it an introduction first. So we are on 3:1:1. Hine, Kvar Nizbar B'chelik Aleph Perik Gimel Inyan Hadam. We already explained earlier about man, about humans. Shenimsa bo mashal o nimsa b'shum nivra acher. You find something in human beings that you don't find by any other creation. Dahainu ha'arkava shenirkevu bo shnei mitzios rechokim v'nivdalim zamizeh haguf v'haneshama. Human being is very unique. It's the only thing in creation that has a combination of two things which are very distant from each other and totally separate, really kind of opposites in a way. The guf and the neshama, the body and the soul. So human beings, a soul, we know, we spoke about, is a spiritual component which yearns to get close to Hashem, and the body is a physical component which is a very earthly type of thing. And these two things are very distant from each other. The body yearns for certain things, and the soul yearns for other things. The human being is the only being in creation that has both. Right? Animals really just have a body and a very low level of a soul, but not a neshama that we have. And angels, they are just spiritual; they have no bodies, things like that. So, but we are the only creations that have both. So he says, first of all, a human being does have in common what we call a nefesh. It's a certain level of the soul that we share with animals. We have this, just like animals have a nefesh, we also have a nefesh. The nefesh serves that it enables human beings and animals to feel, to have intellect, or whatever they need for their nature. So let's say the instincts of humans and the instincts of animals, that is from the nefesh. The inyan ha-nefesh hazos, b'chol balei hachayim hu metzius echad dak ma'od. It's a very refined reality, this nefesh, in animals. Nimshach ubo b'toch hazera achrei hikalto, and it comes into the animal after conception. V'hu atzmo mispashid v'holech, and this nefesh expands. Ubone es haguf kfi ma sheroi leminahu, and this nefesh actually builds the body according to whatever specific animal we're talking about. Whatever this animal needs, the nefesh is responsible, it sounds like, for building the body. It expands as it gets older. V'chein mispashid imo b'hisgadlo, and it expands as the animal grows. Ubo tali hahergesh, and the nefesh is where the animal feels. V'chein haskala haroi leminahu, and whatever intellect that animal has. Right? Animals have instincts. They know. The Canadian geese know to come to New Jersey for the winter and go back for the summer. The salmon know to go upstream to mate for whatever crazy reason they do that. And they have. I think they've done studies.
The cicadas going to Maryland.
Yeah, the cicadas go to Maryland. Baruch Hashem, Bli Ayin Hara, we have had no cicadas in Manalapan, which is very awesome. But I heard in Princeton they have a lot, which is only 45 minutes away. But very lucky in Bli Ayin Hara, there should be no cicadas in Manalapan. Something to do with the soil, I heard. But I was reading about geese, even like the way they know how exactly, how far to go and where to go when they migrate is apparently very amazing. But I don't know much about it. But I remember reading it once. It's very. But whatever it is, whatever an animal needs to know for its survival, that is done by the nefesh. So while all dogs probably don't go to heaven, they don't go to heaven. Well, probably. All dogs don't go to heaven. They do have a nefesh, which is a certain type of spiritual component which gives its intellect and whatnot. I remember there was a synagogue which had a yortzeit plaque for pets, which I thought was very interesting, to say the least. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Kihine. B'balei chayim atzmam yesh hefresh gadol b'haskalasim. Now, within animals themselves, there's a big difference in their intellect. V'haskalas b'nei adam nivdelas mehaskalas kulam havdal gadol. Now, between animals, you have certain animals that are smarter than others, right? You have certain breeds of dogs that are smarter. Certain primates, I guess, are smarter than other animals. But when it comes to human beings, the intellect of human beings is totally separate, totally on a different plane. V'ulam kol ze nasa b'nefesh hazos, but it's still made with the nefesh. So we kfi chuka hativi ukfi achanas hakelim hamishamshem lo. V'chol min umin v'vi mashu. So even though human beings have an intellect and have instincts, whatever they need, and it's at a greater level, and there are different levels in different animals, nevertheless, that is all the result of the nefesh. V'hinei b'nefesh ha'adam yibachnu b'chinas v'kochos. Now, within the nefesh of man, we have things that animals don't have. Kigon, for example, hadimyan. Okay, I shouldn't say animals don't have. It could be they have certain elements of these. But he says a human nefesh has kigon hadimyan, has imagination, v'hazikar and memory, haseichel, intellect, v'haratzon, a will, kulam kochos b'nefesh. These are all things in the nefesh. Mugbalim bigvulim yaduim, that have certain rules, certain measurements. Upalim bedrachim yuchadim, and they work in certain ways. Okay, so that's the nefesh. That's explaining the nefesh. That's the lower level of the soul that human beings share with animals. Amnam beis milvad kol zeh. Besides this, nimtza od ba'adam mitzius nafshi nivdal ve'elyon ma'od. There's another aspect of man which is totally separate and elevated very much. Ve'ena tachlis b'viyasa ba'adam ela lekashro b'shrashim halyonim. And the only purpose of this thing is to connect man with the upper worlds. Sheyesh lo lekasher b'am lios ma'isa molidin toladatam ba'kochos halyonim b'koach gadol. What he's talking about now is the neshama. So in addition to a nefesh, human beings also have something called a neshama. A neshama is a higher level of the soul, which connects human beings to the upper spiritual worlds. Neshama and animals do not have a neshama. That's only human beings. Now he adds something we learned before, something that Nefesh Chaim talks about very often. Once our neshamas are connected to the upper worlds, that means that's what allows our actions to affect the upper worlds. So when a Jewish person does a mitzvah, he creates positive spiritual forces, which are a reality, a certain mitzius, that are created in the upper worlds. Or if chas v'shalom, God forbid, he does an aveira, that creates negative spiritual forces in the upper worlds. The reason that our actions impact the upper worlds is because of our neshama, which is connected to them. If a dog does something wrong, if a dog goes to the bathroom on the carpet, he does not impact the upper spheres in the upper olamos. Okay. Now it's through this neshama that a human being gets his shefa. The human being gets the spiritual energy through the neshama, which is connected to the upper worlds. From these upper spheres. And from the neshama goes to the nefesh. So the nefesh is connected to the neshama, and the neshama is connected to these upper worlds. So certain spiritual energy flows through down to the neshama, and through the neshama to the nefesh and to the body and whatever it needs. And from the nefesh to the body. And the upper soul dictates to the lower soul how it works. And it makes it do actions that are needed. Whenever a man needs it. According to the connection it has to the upper worlds. This nefesh connects to the lower one. And the lower nefesh connects to a certain very refined element in blood. So we find that the body is connected to this lower nefesh. That lower nefesh is specifically which part of the body? That's in the blood, the dam. That's why we say adam hu nefesh. We're not allowed to eat blood. There's a certain element of the soul, that of the lower soul, that's in there. And the lower soul connects to the upper soul. Okay. So you'll notice here, the way the Ramchal classifies it, and I'm not saying he's arguing, but usually the Vilna Gaon and others, he's going to talk about it also. We usually talk about nefesh, ruach, and neshama, but what the Ramchal here has really is two main categories of an upper soul, which he calls neshama, and a lower soul, which he calls nefesh. And within neshama, he's going to say that within the upper soul, there's something called nefesh, ruach, neshama, and also chai yechida, but that's all within the upper soul. And then he's going to say, even within that, there are many parts. In other places we talk about it, the Vilna Gaon talks about it, seems to just be nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and not that it's two categories and then subdivided. So that's just a little insight. I'm not exactly sure. It sounds like it's just a different classification. I'm not sure exactly if they're arguing or whatever, but just wanted to bring that up.
So David, you're saying that there's both a nefesh and there is an neshama, two parts of the same soul, or the neshama is up there and the nefesh is down here. How does that work?
So it sounds like there's two main parts of the soul, which he's saying. There's the lower soul, nefesh, which we share with animals. Then there's the neshama, which is the higher soul, which connects to the upper worlds. And within that upper soul and the neshama, that's also subdivided into main parts, also called nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. And he's going to say also that there are many, many parts. Those are just the main categories. There's many. He's going to say that the soul in general is like many smaller parts connected like a chain. There's rings in a chain, and the lower part of one connects, and it connects and connects up, 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 up. So we really could say that a person has a soul, but it's really like he has many souls, or many parts of a soul. And he's going to talk about how you can actually gain parts of a soul for part of your life and then lose them, and things like that. But it's not something that we can feel with our senses. That he's gonna discuss that. But this is all Kabbalistic stuff, and he's really just giving us the basic ideas. But let's go a little further because he's going to talk about some of these ideas. Say v'hine b'pnei hakesher is that because of this connection again between the upper soul and the lower soul, sheniksheres nefesh zos b'guf al yedei nefesh hatachtona, that the body is connected to the lower soul, which is connected to the upper soul. Nimseis mukbeles b'gvulim pratim v'nimna mimeno ha'ishtatfus va'esek im hanimtzam meruchanim v'nivdalim. Because the upper soul is connected to the lower soul, connected to the body, that prevents the upper soul, the neshama, from having contact or having, let's say, unbridled experiences with the spiritual world. In a way, our neshamas are trapped here in the physical world. Our physicality limits the spiritual experiences our neshamas could have. Right? If it wasn't in a body, it could, interact with all the spiritual forces in the world and have a perception of all these things. But since it's connected to the body, it's limited. All the time that it's connected to the body. All of a person's life. And it's impacted from not only that, the neshama is impacted from the actions of the body. To connect through it with the light of Hashem. Meaning a person has free will, so if he chooses to go after Hashem, that means he will connect to the light of Hashem if he chooses to go after Hashem, if he chooses to do mitzvos, and that'll positively impact his soul. Or he could veer away from Hashem, and he could cleave to the forces of impurity. And that will cause impurity in his soul. And whether he gets close to Hashem or farther from Hashem, that will be whether a person readies his neshama to fulfill its purpose, which is getting close to Hashem and completeness, or getting away from Hashem. V'hi poeles ba'adam. Now, that's the body, how the body affects the soul. By me choosing to physically put on tefillin, I now cause a certain light to come into my neshama and to get closer to Hashem. That's how my body affects the soul. But now the soul also impacts the body. The soul acts within man, and it tells the nefesh what to do, the lower soul what to do. Leads the lower soul, and puts certain ideas, images in it, and puts in certain thoughts based on its inclination. So just like the body can impact the soul, so too the soul will impact the body. Now, what's interesting? Excuse me, just give a little minute for a second. We'll just conclude with this. I thought it was interesting how Rav Chaim Friedlander points out that it sounds like when you read the Ramchal that the neshama is actually in a person. It's part of a person. But when you read, if you look at Nefesh Chaim, Aleph Tezvav, he points out that the neshama is actually not in a person. It's connected. it sounds like the ruach, which is the middle level of the soul. There's nefesh, ruach, and neshama. That the ruach, part of the ruach, it sounds like is in the body. Part of the ruach is outside of the body, and the neshama is totally outside the body. Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes the only people that merited to have their neshama inside their body was Moshe Rabbeinu and Adam Rishon before he sinned, and Adam before he sinned. But a regular human being, such as us, does not have the soul within the neshama within his body. He says what we could have though is certain nitzotzos, certain sparks of the neshama at certain times could influence us to make us to have very holy level, very, very, very lofty levels. But he says only Moshe and Adam before he sinned had the soul as part of his body. But it sounds like, just reading the Ramchal, he points out from Chaim Freelander that it sounds like, the entire neshama is in a person's body, unless the Ramchal means also the sparks of the neshama. But he doesn't really say that. But so the Ramchal is going to go on now, and we'll continue next week, God willing, where he's going to speak about the more about the neshama and how this neshama, which is connecting to the spiritual worlds, how it can be impacted certain times during dreams, certain hashpah, certain spiritual things can be sent to the neshama, and whether we'll discuss whether dreams mean anything or not, or if and how a person gets prophecy. The way we can connect to this upper world is because we have this neshama which connects to the spiritual worlds. And he's going to write that we can't physically feel our neshamas, right? On Shabbos we get a neshama yisera. We can't necessarily feel it like, oh, here it is, I got it now. Although on Shabbos you could really, there was a big rabbi, Rashiva told me that he said there's one halacha in the Gemara and Shas he doesn't understand. It says that if you're lost in the desert and you don't know when Shabbos is, you count 7 days and you keep Shabbos. So he says, how can you not know when Shabbos is? You feel it. You feel it in your bones when it's Shabbos, right? You feel different on Shabbos. It's not just the chalent. It's a whole different feeling. You're more connected to Hashem. You can grow spiritually more. Everything looks different on Shabbos. It's a whole different experience. You don't have to be such a holy person to have that, feeling that Shabbos is a little different. So whether that's because of the Neshama Yisera specifically or something else, I don't know. But the Ramchal is going to say how a person could have, one person can have more parts of a Neshama than somebody else, but that doesn't mean that he's more alive. That just means he's connected to the upper worlds in a, I guess, more profound way than the other person. But, you can't look at somebody like, oh yeah, he's very active, he has more Neshamas. That's not how it works. But the Ramchal, he mentioned it earlier and he's going to talk about it again a little bit. But thank you so much for coming.
Very good.
And can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you next week.